And welcome to Planning Michigan's 2020 conference. My name is Kami Podakuchi, and I'm a professor at Wayne State University's Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and I'm also a member of the MAP board. We're so pleased you have taken the time to join us for this virtual conference. Before we jump in, let me just go over a few housekeeping items now so you know how best to participate in today's event. If you're having technical difficulties, please contact MAP staff via the conference platform. Also, since the session is being pre-recorded, we'll not have questions and answers after today's session. If you have questions or comments, please check out the platform for contact information for our speakers. Today's session is Considering Racial and Health Equity in City Planning. We have three presenters today. First up, Sam Shapinski. Sam is a project manager for the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan's Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health, or Rouge grant, and leads the foundation's efforts to improve health, prevent chronic disease, and reduce health disparities through culturally appropriate programming in Western Wayne County. Next, we'll have Teresa Tejada. Teresa is a program specialist with the National Kidney Foundation's Rouge initiative. She's responsible for developing policies, systems, and innovations regarding nutrition and active living in Western Wayne County. She has 10 years of experience working with health-focused organizations in the nonprofit sector, providing project management, nutrition education, grant writing, and program development expertise. And finally, we'll have Marie McCormick. Marie is the executive director of the Friends of the Rouge. She's led the direction of the Lower Rouge River Water Trails long-term strategic plan and safety plan that includes securing funding to support equitable access to greenways and blueways in southeastern Michigan, as well as securing collaborative partnerships to approach the design-build process in an equitable and inclusive way. Welcome again. Take it away, Sam.
Thank you for the introduction, Cami. By the end of this session, you should know what is meant by the term social determinants of health and how these impact a person's health status, be able to identify health disparities in Western Wayne County, identify planning-based strategies to reduce health disparities applied in the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan's REACH project, and identify collaborative solutions to economic redevelopment and non-motorized access as part of the development of the Lower Rouge Water Trail in Greenway in Southeast Michigan. Efforts to improve health in the United States have traditionally looked to the healthcare system as the driver of health and health outcomes. However, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, there's increased agreement that improving health and achieving health equity requires broader approaches that address social, economic, and environmental factors that influence health. Let's define a few terms. The social determinants of health are conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play that affect a wide range of health risks and outcomes. Health equity means that everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. Health equity is not the same as health equality. Health equality means that resources and opportunities are distributed equally. Since we do not all start from equal footing, we cannot achieve the same health outcomes with equal resources. The burden of disease affects individuals differently. Health disparities are differences in health outcomes and their causes among different groups of people. For example, African Americans are about 4 times as likely to develop kidney failure from diabetes than Caucasians, and about 6.5 times as likely to develop kidney disease from hypertension than Caucasians. As shown on the image on the right, social determinants of health can be grouped into 5 domains: economic stability, education, health and healthcare, neighborhood and built environment, social and community contexts. Healthy People 2030 provides a framework to improve health by addressing social determinants of health. Another way to consider social determinants of health is in this diagram. The health impact pyramid is a graphical representation of tiers of influence that may result from public health interventions. At the base are interventions that address social determinants of health. Think efforts to impact income for the economic domain, or early child education, childcare, access to healthcare, public transportation, childcare for some of the other domains. As we move up the pyramid, interventions are more specific to an individual and therefore can have a greater impact on one's individual health. Lower tier interventions on the whole have a greater impact because they reach more people and require less individual effort. I'd like to share a little bit about my organization. The National Kidney Foundation of Michigan was founded in 1955. Our mission is to prevent kidney disease and improve the quality of life for those living with it. We are affiliated with a national organization, the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan in New York, but we are independently governed. Our state office is based out of Ann Arbor, and through branch offices in Grand Rapids and Detroit, we reach much of the Lower Peninsula. About 1 in 7 American adults have chronic kidney disease, but most don't know it. That equates to about 37 million American adults. The leading causes of chronic kidney disease are largely preventable. Diabetes and hypertension account for about 70% of all cases. Just as there are disparities in overall health and for racial and ethnic minorities, there are significant health disparities related to chronic kidney disease. African Americans make up about 14% of the general population, but they make up 45% of those receiving dialysis and 46% of those waiting for a kidney transplant. In Michigan, there are about 2,200 people currently waiting for a transplant. Nationally, there are almost 100,000 people waiting for a transplant. Although there are many kidney transplants every year, thousands still die waiting for one. Our vision is to have healthy communities where all people achieve their greatest quality of life. Our approach includes both prevention and management. We have direct service programs, education, and patient services. I'd like to highlight just a few of the things we do. At the heart of our mission are people living with kidney disease. Our patient services team coordinates an emergency fund to help address urgent needs. We offer medical ID tags, coordinate a peer mentor program, and provide a wide array of direct education. Our programming is typically in person, but we've quickly adapted to distance or virtual learning in response to the pandemic. Some of these are directed at school-aged children, others more for adults. Some are specifically for people with chronic conditions, while others have individuals at high risk for developing chronic disease as the primary audience. Across the past 15 years, we have prioritized prevention, both primary and secondary. Increasingly, we have adopted a policy, systems, and environmental change approach that potentially has a long-term impact. Since 2018, we have been involved in the Center for Disease Control's REACH initiative. REACH, which is short for Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health, is a national effort performed at a local level. We carry out culturally appropriate programs that address a wide range of health issues among racial and ethnic minority populations that are at especially high risk for chronic disease. There are 31 REACH grantees in 23 states and the District of Columbia. As we will describe, the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan has focused efforts in Western Wayne County. According to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's Community Health Rankings, Wayne County ranks last of 83 counties in Michigan in both health outcomes and health factors. We concentrate efforts in the cities of Inkster, Wayne, and Westland, whose total population is about 125,000 people. Our priority populations, African Americans and Latinx or Hispanic Americans, are vulnerable populations whose health and well-being are often linked to social, economic, and environmental disadvantages. These populations comprise about a fifth of the total population in these cities, and even more when we concentrate efforts in one Westland zip code. This table displays population estimates for 2018, as well as health factors described in 3 local community health needs assessments. These are small cities with high rates of obesity and diabetes. By working in small cities, we believe we can have a more significant impact on health outcomes. Our approach is anchored in community engagement. We work closely with 3 community coalitions, the Inkster Task Force, Healthy Wayne, and Healthy Westland. These coalitions are comprised of a variety of stakeholders and partner organizations that cross multiple sectors, including healthcare, local government, small businesses, community organizations, and most importantly, residents. Engagement with community members and organizational partners is essential to success. We reach out to community stakeholders as personally and directly as possible in order to understand their needs and develop solutions together. After defining the problem, be it limited access to healthy food, too few sidewalks, language limitations by health centers, we work with partners and stakeholders to map existing assets, understand gaps, plan interventions, and ultimately make changes. This should be an iterative process where we continually engage stakeholders, especially residents, let that inform the strengths and weaknesses of the interventions, and find new opportunities. This isn't ideal. We're not always successful. Still, it's important to have community members as part of the entire process. When we meet community members where they are, literally and figuratively, we come up with solutions that fit their priorities and are more sustainable. Our approach involves 3 strategies: active living, healthy eating, and community clinical linkages. We will highlight the major efforts for just a few. I now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Teresa.
Thanks, Mr. We're going to go into some detail about how our strategies and planning can be connected. So first we'll talk about our access to health centers, and access to care is difficult for many people, especially those with limited mobility. For example, those who don't drive, seniors, and individuals with disabilities. So how can we connect health resources to the community where people have access every day? Our goal with our community clinical linkages strategy is to have programs and systems working together to meet this challenge and ensure that all people are connected to clinical settings and to evidence-based programs that improve their health. And planning can have a role with that too. So are routes to existing facilities easily and safely accessible by public transit, biking, and walking? And so this map shows access to health centers in our REACH communities. And that purple sector in the middle represents Western Maine Family Health Center, which is a federally qualified health center in the predominantly Black city of Inkster. It is located adjacent to the main thoroughfare of Michigan Avenue and has a bus stop right in front of it. If we look at this map from SEMCOG, it shows that a good part of the community is within a 30-minute walk, but it doesn't show that the speed limit is higher in this area than in the adjoining cities of Dearborn and Wayne, and that there are limited crosswalks and intersections in this area, which complicate the accessibility of this location. And so this is an example where a cross-sector groups of organizations, residents, and planners can come together to make this corridor more accessible. And 2 initiatives were started to tackle this: Slow Down Michigan Avenue, which was resident-led, and the Michigan Avenue Group to Improve the Corridor, which is kind of on hold right now. So designed as a traffic calming initiative with economic development goals, this would also benefit the health accessibility of the center. And just to give a little bit more examples of walkability to the health center. So the Safe Routes to Healthy Food Report, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, provides some statistics that put this into perspective in terms of racial equity. Streets with well-marked crosswalks are twice as common in high-income areas than low-income communities. And major arterial roadways and 4-way intersections are more concentrated in low-income areas than upper-income areas. And so we can see in this picture that this is the intersection of Michigan Avenue and Inkster Road, which is the closest intersection to Western Maine Family Health Center. And so you'll see this intersection is not very pedestrian friendly at all. And that things like painted sidewalks and other features would make it attractive and safer for pedestrians who need to cross Michigan Avenue. And then city master plans can also consider access to healthcare as part of its long-term goals. One tool that can help with planning and zoning would be to look at designated health professional shortage areas and medically underserved areas. Health professional shortage areas are designated by a federal organization called HRSA as having shortages of primary medical care, dental, or mental health care providers. And maybe geographic, such as a county or a service area, a population like low-income or Medicaid eligible, or facilities such as federally qualified health centers or other state or federal prisons. Medically underserved areas are areas or populations designated by HRSA as having too few primary care providers, high infant mortality, high poverty, or a high elderly population. And so you can see in the map above the areas, which areas are considered medically underserved areas in our target communities. And so the green areas are primary care health professional shortage areas, and the blue areas are mental health professional shortage areas. And these locations are also predominantly lower income communities of color. And zoning and incentives that support health centers in these areas would greatly improve accessibility and health outcomes among these populations. So another one of our overall REACH strategies is about nutrition. And so while many people might think that planners don't really have a big role on what people eat, in fact, planning greatly impacts nutrition. Nonprofits and health organizations can implement programs that inform and encourage people to eat healthy, but what is available in the community and in the food system has to do with planning. So NKFM is working to establish a food policy council on Western Wayne County and conducted a series of listening sessions throughout the summer to hear from the public about their experiences with the food system and what can be done to make a more equitable and resilient food system. The Food Policy Council will bring together about 30 people so far, including residents, nonprofit organizations, and government officials to take the feedback we learned from these listening sessions and work to change policy. So planners often play a role in food policy councils because they can help shape the food system through master plans, ordinances, and zoning decisions. And some of those decisions are listed here on the screen, with ordinances about urban farming, gardens and chickens up for consideration, and land use decisions for farm stands, and small and large markets up for planning. In the absence of healthy food retail, often convenience stores and party stores emerge, and so planning can help with impact that. And so I'm also curious to see how COVID-19 will affect the food landscape, as restaurants might close and what businesses will take their place. So we described a video describing our food system listening session process and some of the findings from that, which you can find on our YouTube channel, which the link is right here. But I wanted to give an example of how planning, community engagement, cross-sector work, and our Food Policy Council can help increase healthy food access. So many participants in the listening sessions who work or live in Inkster share that there's a lack of access to to fresh fruits, vegetables, and meat, and there's only one small grocery store in the city. And so therefore lots of convenience stores fill the void. And this reflects a national trend where low-income, rural, predominantly Black, and predominantly Latino neighborhoods have fewer supermarkets and more convenience stores than higher income, urban, and white neighborhoods. While community gardens are active in the city, more permanent food outlets are needed. And so many participants reported driving to other cities to get their food, which again reflects a national trend, as low-income residents, Black residents, and Latino residents are less likely than other residents to shop for food in their own census tracts. NKFM is working with the Inkster Task Force in the city of Inkster to establish a farmers market in the city, and the Food Policy Council will also explore other avenues to promote food access in the city. People of color and low-income people are more likely to use healthy and sustainable ways to get around, such as walking and biking, but unsafe street conditions put them at risk for traffic-related crashes and fatalities. Bicycle fatality rates are 23% higher for Latinos and 30% higher for African Americans compared with whites. And these statistics reflect the lived experience of Inkster residents who only have one grocery store, limited sidewalks, and many major thoroughfares. And so this picture shows that although this isn't a grocery store, this is the very popular Dozier Recreation Center in Inkster. But you can see that there aren't any sidewalks along Merriman Avenue, and that footpath shows that it's used all the time. So this reflects a statistic that nationwide sidewalks are present in 49% of low-income neighborhoods compared to 89% of high-income neighborhoods. So the Safe Routes to Healthy Food report that I mentioned earlier, and the link is down on the bottom there of the slide, presented a few strategies that planners in collaboration with other groups can work on to mitigate these racial disparities. These are: adopt a Safe Routes to Healthy Food resolution, use healthy food financing initiatives to establish retail, and thinking about transportation access as part of that development, zoning for healthy food access, improving active transportation and transit connectivity. And for example, Flint has dedicated bus lines that are rides to grocery bus lines. And then using land use plans to bring safe routes and healthy foods together. So I highly encourage everyone to read this report. And I also want to lift up the work of Charles T. Brown of Rutgers University, who's done some really amazing work on pedestrian and cycling equity. His theory of arrested mobility can be found on chronicdisease.org. And so this is a photo of the Kroger in Westland on Michigan Avenue. And that Kroger draws from lots of surrounding communities in Inkster and Wayne that are lower income and have more residents of color than other parts of the city. And you can see that this Kroger is very oriented to car traffic. The Safe Routes to Healthy Food report suggests that a number of requirements that could be made for stores to make them more friendly for pedestrian and bikers, which include build and orient entrances towards pedestrians, provide amenities and infrastructure for people walking, biking, such as bike racks, and then safe pedestrian paths through the parking lot. Designing parking lots to consider walking and biking entrances and exits. Allow sidewalks displays to make food venues more attractive and inviting, and ensure safety with pedestrian-oriented lighting and ground floor windows. And then just overall, more bike parking and less car parking would encourage more pedestrian and biking routes to those healthy foods. So another strategy is active routes to everyday destinations that we're working on with our Reach project. And with COVID-19, more people than ever before understand the importance of outdoor spaces and are looking to be active in their own communities. The NKEM's focus on active living strategies look to see how we can support and expand active routes to everyday destinations, particularly in communities of color. As part of that, we're working on safe routes to schools with the Wayne Westland School District this year. And we're focusing on education and encouragement for kids to walk and bike to school and in their own communities, with this school year being virtual this year. But then we're also looking to see how can we do some more policies and environmental change as well. And so some of the schools have expressed some interest in establishing remote drop-off locations, which would help reduce congestion while encouraging physical activity. And we're also looking to pair these policies and programming changes with planning initiatives. And so there's some potential planning for maybe some bike lanes and sharrows that are being explored. And so we want to connect with that and use our grant funding to support that with signage and promotion and connecting with our Safe Routes to School strategies. And we're committed to ensuring that the concerns and voices of Black and Brown residents will be heard and focused on during this planning process to ensure that the implementation meets the needs of the whole community. And so this picture of an elementary school and in a park in Westland shows a perfect example of two everyday destinations that we're looking to connect with everyday transportation, everyday active transportation. And then we're also working with our community coalitions to develop community-driven solutions to promote physical activity. So the Healthy Wayne Coalition had identified a desire to install mileage markers on a walking path at Atwood Park, which you can see on the left. And so Wayne has a very active bike club, but the community members wish to see more people walking. And so the mileage markers will help with that. And we are currently in the process of facilitating the Promoting Active Communities assessment with the group, which will help identify goals that the group can work on with other partners such as planners, which also builds upon the previous community health needs assessments conducted by Beaumont and the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan. But it will focus on active living specifically, and will give some suggestions related to planning, such as shared use paths, joint use agreements with school facilities in the community, and access and connectivity. So conducting this assessment has been a great way to see where we've come from as a community and celebrate that all that we have achieved as we look forward to doing even more. We also were involved with reviewing the Westland's Parks and Recreation Master Plan during the public comment period. And so I would encourage that all planners, as they're doing these types of plans, specifically reach out to diverse stakeholders, both in terms of organizations and demographics, and intentionally invite communities of color to participate in the master planning feedback process. Because community organizations like the Kidney Foundation can also help out with this outreach to ensure that a wide voice is part of the master plan. And then this map of Westland is from the CDC's 500 Cities project, which uses data from 2015 and demonstrates that in that dark brownish census tract, 37.5 to 42% of adults don't get any leisure time physical activity. While there are some community parks in the area, more needs to be done to determine why this community does not engage in physical activity. And then according to the 500 cities data, this census tract also experiences higher than average rates of asthma, high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, COPD, heart disease, stroke, poor mental health, and seniors with lost teeth than the rest of Westland. Because of these disparities, we're excited to partner with the Friends of the Rouge, who's working to establish a water trail that would be right in the census tract's backyard. So now I'd like to pass the presentation to Marie McCormick with Friends of the Rouge.
Thank you, Teresa. So our nonprofit was made official in 1986. However, the grassroots effort that led to the formation began in the spring of 1970 with the commencement of the first Earth Day, which is now 50 years ago this year. So here at the Friends of the Rouge, our mission or our guiding mantra is to restore, protect, and enhance the Rouge River watershed through stewardship, education, and collaboration. All of our work is guided by this phrase and must be mission focused in order to be considered for projects. The Rouge River encompasses a large part of Detroit metropolitan area in Southeast Michigan. You can see the red area, which is urbanized on this map, and the sort of white outline you see is the outline of our watershed. It's home to about a quarter of the population in Michigan, and our watershed is more than 50% urbanized, which sort of translates to highly populated and highly paved. You can see the Rouge watershed in the center here in light yellow. At 467 square miles, this large watershed, or an area of land to which all the water drains to a low point, and which in our case is a river, is home to 48 different townships, villages, and cities. You will notice our watershed also covers a large chunk of Detroit, which is in the far central east section of our watershed. So some of Detroit is still in a true watershed, whereas most of the city is considered a sewershed, meaning it no longer has daylit rivers or streams, but rather those streams live in large pipes that are integrated into the sewer system. So before we talk about planning, we must take a moment and consider the history of the region in focus. The Rouge River has a rich and colorful history that's led to its current extreme industrial urban landscape that we know today. And this is really my focus of the talk today is on the lower part of the main stem. So this is an image of the mouth of the Rouge pre-Ford. This is an artistic rendering from the late 1800s. It's really hard to believe that this is the mouth of the Rouge. Compared to the previous slide that you saw, all that industrial background, it's literally the same geographic location. Less than 150 years of planning, the sole emphasis on economy rather than health, community, environment led to what you see today. While we can't shy away from our industrial legacy and the importance of these economic workforces, it should give you a moment of pause to think about American culture and our tendency to be reactive rather than proactive in planning. Europeans, and mostly French, arrived in the Great Lakes region in the 1600s as furs, at the time in very high demand in Europe. By the mid-1800s, beaver and fur trade was completely over due to the ceaseless slaughter of beaver and loss of habitat across all of North America. Detroit was a major center for processing, collecting, and exporting furs, and this trade served as sort of the genesis for European establishment in this area. As opportunities for further industrialized development progressed and the infrastructure matured with it, the region grew in population. At its peak in the mid-1950s, Detroit had about 2 million residents. Today, Detroit hovers around 600 to 700,000 residents. Excuse me. Dozens of industries operated in the area from the 1800s, and these were iron, steel mills, coking, tar, and paper manufacturing, along with heavy shipping and train traffic to supply factories' resources needs. Those operations continued for generations at a time when there was little concern about let alone regulation of, industrial environmental practices. This included Henry Ford's Rouge plant, a 2,000-acre fully integrated automobile manufacturing facility. And at the time it was completed in 1928, it was the largest in the whole world. The factory transitioned to manufacturing war machines to aid in World War II and was deemed the arsenal of democracy and was credited in many parts for assisting in the Allies' victory. At one point, there were about 82 million gallons of industrial waste daily going into that channel, in and out of the Rouge and the Detroit rivers untreated. That was in the day when these river channels were deemed an acceptable way to get these wastes off the land and away from people. Nearly 51 years ago, on October 9th, 1969, sparks from an acetylene torch ignited oil and wooden debris. Flames shot 50 feet in the air. 10 pieces of Detroit Fire Department equipment and 65 men fought the fire. Strangely, the event merited very little press attention at the time. People were not surprised to see the river on fire. It was sort of accepted as the cost of doing business for nearly 100 years. However, a few took notice, like the late Congressman John D. Dingell, and paired with other major fires of the late 60s, helped clear the way to deliver important legislation like the Clean Water Act of 1972 that laid the groundwork for cleaning up the Rouge. So what we do to the course of the river basically affects everything in our life, right? Rivers naturally meander within their floodplain and need that floodplain. One of the most detrimental things you can do to a river is straighten it and build it in the floodplain. The first shortcut channel was dug around Zug Island, which was formerly Brady's Island. You can see that in the image here, in 1894. And the impacts were seen in the fish community already by the 1920s. You can see the old channel and an old road where the shortcut channel was dug. You can see the arrow pointing to it right there. Parallel to the old channel to West Jefferson Avenue, you can still see some of the remaining French ribbon farms in this image from 1876. The black-white area is the land prior to becoming Zug Island, originally mapped out, and it's right there, Brady Island. So that area was originally called Belgrade, or the capital of Hungary. It was renamed Del Rey in 1851. As you can imagine, it was a welcome place for immigrants from Hungary as well as those from Poland and Armenia. It took until 1897 for this community to become fully incorporated. However, that didn't last long, as the city of Detroit annexed the area in 1906, despite a vote from the people of that community of 449 to 370 by the Del Rey citizens against annexation. The key factor in the demise of this neighborhood was the Detroit city planners' decision to phase out residential zoning in the 1950s. This decision began the slow march toward industrial expansion, including the largest wastewater treatment facility built in the world, right there. In order to install the large clarifying tanks for the facility, they had to remove hundreds of homes in Del Rey, despite protests from the community. You can see the neighborhood on this slide in the right image. All these homes are now gone. This is just another example of how planners and how zoning changes the quality of life for residents. How this area has disproportionately suffered some of the worst environmental injustices in the state of Michigan, and this area's zip code, 48127, is known as the dirtiest zip code in Michigan and the third dirtiest in the country. In the 1970s, the river was straightened and encased in concrete to guarantee no flooding, to convey the flow quickly and directly to the Detroit River, and enable the building of Fairlane Mall, the location which was very rare remaining wetlands, which, if you know about wetlands, they already function as flood control. So this channelization reduced 5.8 miles of natural river to a 4-mile concrete-lined channel. In this 1968 image, you can see the natural river overlaid with a planned concrete channel. You can see existing concrete channel in the image at the right, the bottom right. So unforeseen by planners and engineers at the time, this whole project has been a costly disaster both ecologically and socially, dramatically changing the lived experience for both humans and non-humans in this area for the worse. Less than 50 years later, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is looking to remove the concrete channel at a huge public expense. Friends of the Rouge has been brought to the table with other local agencies and non-government organizations at the very start of the planning process, including entities like the Environmental Protection Agency, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, the Department of Natural Resources, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Wayne County, and Friends of the Detroit River, to name a few. And as a side note, the Fairlane Mall, for which this river was ravished, is now a dead mall. And like many malls in Southeast Michigan, with over 8,400 unused parking spaces and more than 50% vacant. So cleaning up the Rouge has been an incredible collaborative multi-jurisdictional effort from our federal, state, county, and local governments to a local and regional NGOs working together for over 5 decades to get the river to a place where we can encourage recreation. Imagining our children recreating on a river that once caught fire. That's incredible. I do want to just point out a couple of the things here. So in the center bottom, you'll see the Hubbell Southfield Combined Sewer Outfall, which I believe was or still is the largest CSO in the country. Other things that help clean up the river, you see trash cleanups, restoration projects, both small and large. You can see in the center top and the bottom left, these are rain garden projects to the large projects like the Kingfisher Bluff restoration project on the right. And on the bottom right is some biological monitoring that's done to ensure the success of the projects. Please let me know if you want more information about the kinds or types of large to small projects that have been done, are currently underway, or are planned. But just to put it in perspective, over $1 billion has been spent on cleanup efforts alone in the Rouge since the 1980s. And the watershed has still not been removed from a single impairment as an area of concern since its designation in 1987. Nevertheless, I also want to mention we just debuted our 5-part Rouge Uncruise virtual kayak series over August and September this year. If you want a really deep dive into the cultural, economic, industrial, environmental history of the Lower Rouge, please do check out these at therouge.org/2020-uncruise. So in 1998, under the guidance of the late Ed Begale, who was at the time the Vice Chancellor of University of Michigan Dearborn, a coalition of stakeholders of all sorts who had a vested interest in the last 8 miles of the Rouge River at the main stem to the Detroit River, these entities came together under the name of the Rouge Gateway Partnership. And now 22 years later, it has since been renamed the Frog Partnership, and it's under the guidance of Dr. Paul Draus. But at the time, so you can see here how the Gateway Master Plan characterized sections of the region in zones, many of which overlapped and lent character to the design, and also represented the variety of different members of the Rouge Gateway Partnership. Everyone from municipalities, cultural institutions, large corporations, universities, and local non-government organizations. And if you recall a few slides back, the overlay of the concrete channel and the natural river, well, this sits directly on top of that. So this was a decades-long, multifaceted initiative, the central purpose of which was to reclaim the Rouge River as a natural, educational, recreational, and aesthetic asset for the community for generations to come. In 2005, the Gateway Partnership members laid out a comprehensive vision for the river in this Rouge River Gateway Master Plan that we're still pursuing today. Many of these projects and goals have come to fruition or are in the works. This includes a number of projects designed to restore relationships between the Rouge and its natural and social systems, which is sort of a new approach to redevelopment and planning that for so long had been strictly focused on traditional economics. So part of Phase 1 focused on connecting Michigan Avenue to Ford Road. This was completed in 2005, which included greening a green section to the University of Michigan Dearborn campus, and it also connects the university to Heinz Drive. So these are some of the examples of the project that was completed in phase 1, pedestrian-focused bridges and asphalt connectors. The next phase of the Gateway Trail will extend from existing phase 1 trail at the pedestrian bridge that you just saw in the last slide. And if you look at the red dotted line, it heads along the west side of the river, then under Evergreen Road, crosses the river north of Michigan Avenue, then travels downstream on the east side of the river to a point downstream of the Oxbow. This is approximately a 1-mile trail that will connect to the Henry Ford. So this Oxbow restoration was one of the key factors in moving this planning process ahead. From an old aerial photograph that the Henry Ford had in their collections, there was a good deal of evidence that there had once been a connected Oxbow on their property. This was later confirmed by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Environmental Protection Agency with some overlay images, the original channel and the concrete channel plans, which I showed you in a slide earlier. For the first phase of the Rouge Gateway Master Plan, partners like the Henry Ford wanted to do their part to restore the Oxbow, which meant excavate it, fill with water, return that part of the river to the natural habitat that supports a healthier ecosystem for fish and wildlife, such as a nursery habitat and for foraging. But secondarily, it was to improve water quality, create floodplain storage, provide educational and interpretive and recreational opportunities, and lastly, to improve the aesthetics on the village grounds. All of these social, economic, cultural, and aesthetic benefits could not be made possible without, first, the ecosystem restoration. So just for reference, an oxbow is a U-shaped bend in a river that gets cut off from the main channel, sometimes forming an island, or like this, you can see a bow. In 2002 to 2005, the channel was excavated, so the center part. In 2007, the southern channel cut was made, and 2019, the northern channel cut was made, making for a fully connected channel, minus there is one pesky little combined sewer outfall that needs to be removed in the next 1 to 2 years. This restored habitat now has 19 species of fish and a bald eagle nesting on the property, to name a few, which in contrast from the 1980s had only 2 species of fish, of which many had deformities. This island will be used to host scout camping and other curated cultural and natural experiences at the fort. So one of the ideas that came out of the Rouge Gateway Partnership, although it's not yet been implemented, is an idea that would connect people by land and water to the Henry Ford as an alternative entrance. The original idea was to have Great Lakes cruise ships dock in the Detroit River and have people take some smaller boats up the Rouge to this welcome gate at the Henry Ford as a landmark campus. You can see the little boats and people coming to a place where pedestrians, bikers, and boaters all come together to enjoy this incredible cultural resource. But still no plans at this point, but hey, you never know. But I want to just point out this is a perfect example of an opportunity for an economic redevelopment as natural resources become more accessible because they are getting cleaned up. So plans continue for a well-connected Greenway and Blueway system, or we call them land trails and water trails, along the Lower Rouge River. They've garnered support for nearly 2 decades. These non-motorized systems connect programs, projects, and communities across Southeast Michigan. The Friends of the Rouge see the success of these bisected blueways and greenways as a means to economic redevelopment in areas touched by this trail. You can see this image originally created for connecting the greenway along the Rouge with a hanging pedestrian bridge. While this exact design scheme may change, the idea of connecting people back to the river remains. Friends of the Rouge has been paddling the Rouge since 2003, annually hosting at least 2 river trips on the industrialized section of the river, which we discussed earlier, and the more natural sections of the river, like what you see here. This picture was taken around Inkster in the Dearborn area upstream. About 6 years ago, Wayne County Parks and a few of the communities along the Lower Rouge, as well as local citizen volunteers and Friends of the Rouge, began loosely leading a water trail planning group. There was very little funding and a lack of strategic direction, but the members had determination. So in 2017, funding finally came through to develop the first comprehensive strategic planning work for this planned route. Led by Wayne County Parks and Friends of the Rouge, the group hired Leah to develop the strategic plan and Living Lab to develop the wayfinding and sign design. Through this process, it was decided to nest the work under Friends of the Rouge's organizational umbrella, giving fiduciary oversight and coordination duties to Friends of the Rouge, and formalizing the group as an official committee of the Friends of the Rouge Board, now known as the Lower Rouge River Water Trail Leadership Committee. So the strategic planning process involved over a dozen committee meetings, which included input from 10 communities, Wayne County Parks, and many local citizens and NGO groups. Participants had 2 public opportunities and nearly a dozen committee meetings they could attend to give input. You can see 2 public meetings here, one in 2018 on the left and on the top. We rotated locations of these meetings to allow for more inclusive participation from local residents as well. As part of the development of the Lower Rouge River Water Trail, Friends of the Rouge held a safety summit in 2019 that brought together fire and police from the 10 communities and Wayne County to talk about who would respond to a paddling emergency. We learned a lot about who does what and worked with them to develop a safety plan for the trail. Dearborn is one of the few communities that has officers trained in swift water rescue and has boats and personnel at the ready. This was a key piece of the trail planning process as it helped coordinate all of these different entities before we released the full strategic plan and rolled it out to the public. So we came out of the nearly 2-year process with 2 excellent guiding documents to set us on course for a successful water trail. We have learned that different layers of engagement are critical to the planning process. It varies from some more standard practices of planning that set a single public meeting that if you don't come, you don't get a voice. We have really strived to meet the public where they are at, and this has made all the difference in public perception and acceptance of this work. Both of these documents are available on Friends of the Rouge's website at therouge.org/water-trail/water-trail-development. You can see our map design here for the Paddler's Guide. This was developed by Living Lab and the Rouge River Water Trail Leadership Committee. It begins in Canton on the far left and moves through 10 communities west to east, following the flow of the river. You can also see the logo we developed as well. The color palette for the project stems from the Wayne County Parks Design Guidelines, as we wanted to work with our largest landowner partner to make sure we have a complementary design. This is the backside of the Paddler's Companion that details the water trail, safety information, a few good river trips, and unique information about every community you pass through on the trail. The left panel is designed for a trip scale, which basically is point A to point B option, that can be installed at a specific location to tell users about a particular river trip. The other 2 more generic panels detail safety and emergency information, as well as general information about the Rouge River and the water trail. All of these signs are available in both Spanish and Arabic, as we feel strongly about the language accessibility for water trail communities that have large concentrations of people who do not have English as their primary language. This is another part of our wayfinding signage design scheme. All 3 of these signs can be paired with medallions that offer further extensive amenity information that can be tailored to any community needs. You can see the different colors. You can move on. These are 2 schematic designs for dual launches at a local park in Westland, Michigan, one of the communities of focus for the REACH initiative. These launches offer a short 1-mile route for paddlers to get their feet wet with a kayak or canoe. So I just wanted to note also on the top right, this is a map. The 2 yellow circles show you where the 2 respective launch designs are located. You can see one of the medallions here. This is for a boat launch. Again, this is a universally understood palette of images that can be interpreted regardless of your primary language. The launch at Gowdy Park, right here, serves as a secondary trailhead. So the launch is a dirt or gravel entry to the side of the riverbank, a very low cost option to construct, but is not accessible to all. You can see a few of our dedicated volunteers doing some woody debris 101 work to manage the wood for both recreational access and fish habitat. In planning for recreational access, the discussion isn't just about building it. You must have a thoughtful, inclusive process for maintaining the trail, whether it's a blue or green trail, especially if you begin promoting it as a community asset. And as a side note, you can see the medallion here signifies that paddlers must walk their vessel to the river. So the City of Inkster is one of our water trail communities. It's taken incredible steps in the development of their master planning process for the Inkster Old City Hall Development Plan. The plan utilizes natural resources on the back half of the highlighted photo here to catalyze economic redevelopment. The plan accounts for the inclusion of new pedestrian and bike-friendly routes, as well as a universally accessible kayak launch on the south side of the river. Here you can see a schematic design for one of two universally accessible launches located at Dearborn Hills Golf Club in Dearborn. This launch, paired with an existing businesses, offers paddlers restrooms, a restaurant, or maybe some golf, a universally accessible launch, an easy parking option, and a few more medallion examples that we have here. It should be noted that if you have one accessible launch, you should certainly be planning for at least two. So you can see here the second planned universally accessible launch at Ford Field in Dearborn, just a few miles downstream of the previous slide. The water trail strategically has planned launches 1 to 2.5 miles apart at minimum to allow for easy accessibility for all user types. Other future planned amenities include a boat locker, educational and interpretive wayfinding signage in both Arabic and English. So in tandem with our water trail efforts, Wayne County Parks has begun preliminary study into the greenways that parallel this section of the Lower Rouge River Water Trail that I just outlined. You can see the project study area in this map as it assists in identifying gaps in non-motorized trail systems or those in existence that need attention. It also begins reviewing opportunities for water trail and land trail intersections, such as multi-use trailheads. This is the most easterly panel. It's one of 12 panels from the study up close in Dearborn, where the Greenway Trail links to the water trail amenities. That orange arrow right there shows you the Ford Field kayak launch, and it's also a trailhead using shared parking lots, picnic areas, and more to create better multi-use recreational amenities. Note the lines in black are trails that are in existence. Black with yellow highlight is a recommended route. Although I can tell you as a local resident that those trails do actually exist, but they are compact dirt trails that run through the woods. And so personally speaking, I know that adding asphalt in those remaining sections of green space may be upsetting to neighbors. So following the Lower Rouge River Greenway plan, Wayne County Parks received a substantial amount of funding from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation to do a regional community planning effort called Connecting the Rouge. This is currently underway and has begun the planning process to identify and create linkages between neighborhoods, communities, jobs, commercial areas, and designations throughout the Rouge River area. The most notable of these planning efforts, in my mind, has been the extremely extensive community input meetings that the selected consulting firm has had with every community along the planning route. So you can see the breadth of the communities these three systems work through. The project encompasses 3 distinct but connected project zones. The first one is the Hines Drive Trail. You see there in green. And I do want to point out that that's a solid line, meaning the Hines Drive Trail is actually already an existing pedestrian trail, but the major part of consideration for this is linking it into communities. Right now, if you're familiar with Hines Drive, in order to access it, a lot of times you have to drive to it, park, and then access it. The second part is the Lower Rouge Greenway, which we just talked about, and some of the pre-planning that had been done. And you can see some of the existing sections in solid purple, and then some of the planned areas in dotted lines. And then the third part is the Rouge River Gateway Greenway, which we talked about earlier with the Rouge Gateway Master Planning Project. So comprehensive, inclusive planning efforts that do not simply check a box take a lot of time and effort. But I'm telling you, they make all the difference in the world. Approaching these projects first from your community, you will get exponentially more buy-in from your intended users, who will not only use it more, advocate more for more of the same, and ultimately take care of it. This is a screenshot of Wayne County Parks Connecting the Rouge public interface webpage. I encourage you to visit the website at connectingtherouge.org and fill out the Connecting the Rouge kickoff survey if you're local to Southeast Michigan. It should only take about 5 minutes to complete. I wanted to point out this website as I think it serves as a good example of public engagement opportunities, especially during this pandemic. Local residents, businesses, NGOs should always have the opportunity to give meaningful input to a planning process. Also, I just wanted to give you this quote list of other plans being considered with all three of the planning efforts I just mentioned. It really takes a lot of time and detail to work through the visions of the entire community. And that's okay. It's all part of a healthy process. So as evidenced with the downtown Detroit Riverwalk transformation with help from the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, which is the image on the left, the rebirth of green spaces combined with stable investors has led to the redevelopment of a highly industrialized wasteland into a major community asset and economic powerhouse. Also on the right, you can see renditions of the Chicago River Mile, the Chicago River Wild Mile. As legacy pollution is cleaned up and recreation can be considered, creating trails and amenities that celebrate the water and the history will help refocus the region on the value of the river as a natural resource and highlight recreation while interpreting past uses. Let's imagine together what our Rouge River could be. So thank you. This is my contact information. If you have anything else you'd like to ask, please feel free to contact me.
Wow. Thank you, Sam, Teresa, and Marie for your excellent presentations with lots of great details, and especially with Marie's wonderful history as well. As we've seen, all three presentations show how important community level solutions are with the active engagement on the part of residents and partnerships between nonprofit organizations and private businesses, public institutions, and municipal agencies, and how important innovative planning is, that is planning that goes beyond business as usual, to promoting equitable access to physical activity, to healthy eating, to access to healthcare, and access to cleaner, healthier natural environments. Thank you very much. And you have the contact information for all the speakers. Feel free to write them if you have any questions. Thank you all.